This might be a little bit of a challenge because I need to have my attention on Michael Bruntz, but we've got a barn burner between the French and the Germans at the Olympic basketball venue here. France up by 2 with 7.4 seconds left. I don't know. I might be delayed a little bit on this thing too. Oh, and spoiler alert, if you were going to watch this entire game in primetime, but that's also super weird. So I feel like it's okay for spoilers of certain things because no one's sitting down with their family to watch all of France and Germany in primetime. So we'll see. France at the line here, trying to put this thing away and go to the championship game against either the United States or Serbia. So there you go. All right, time to talk to Michael Bruntz. Good morning. It's not morning. Really shifting from the radio show I've done for 18 years to this one has its difficulties with it. Good afternoon, Michael. How are you doing today?
Not bad. You ruined my Thursday evening plans, though, by the way. Thank you.
I
was going to gather the family around the tube TV and watch a little. I'm assuming that Tony Parker and Dirk Nowitzki are playing in this game.
Yes, yeah. Dolph Shays is a big part of it for sure. Yeah, that's it's very big. You're missing. I won't tell you what happened in the last 8 seconds though. You'll never believe it.
Oh, good. Okay.
We want to do that. I know I should probably, kind of pick your brain on offensive line depth and what's happening in the secondary. But I kind of want to talk about you reposting a story you wrote in 2011 about Bubba Starling on your Twitter feed.
Where does the time go?
I thought it was like I clicked it because it was titled 90 Minutes with Bubba Starling. And I was like, did he sit down and have a 90-minute conversation with Bubba Starling? And then I looked on the byline and it was an article from 2011 that you wrote. And wow. Yes. But Bubba Starling. What in the heck made you think of your Bubba Starling work from the past?
Well, it was the 13-year anniversary of what was one of the more bizarre fan days that I think I've probably covered in my time covering Nebraska football. And I say that as, somebody who's watched a fan walk through the defensive line autograph line with a mannequin and have them all sign it. So it was I read back through it and I had forgotten a couple things. Obviously the timing of the Major League draft and everything is much different now. There's a lot less drama about, is the guy going to sign? Is he not going to sign? And I mean, if you kind of knew where things were headed, there wasn't much drama about whether or not Bubba Starling was ever going to play in a Nebraska uniform. But it was just fascinating standing there, just kind of watching all this with, the fans going through. I mean, the people saying, oh, we really want you here. They were really kind of trying to put the hard sell on him. Some little kid comes through and says, for $10 million, I'd go play for the Royals too. That kind of stuff. His parents were there, and I remember people actually going up into the stands and like taking pictures with his parents. Like the whole thing was strange, and it was on the heels of Breon Carnes' spring game earlier that spring, where he was going to push everybody on the depth chart and everything. So it was heady times in the Nebraska quarterback room, which also I guess would have included a young Taylor Martinez too. So. But yeah, that was kind of a trip to go back through and read that, knowing that, him moving to Nebraska for 2 weeks and going through summer drills was nothing but a bargaining ploy from Scott Morris. So there you go.
Yeah. There is a picture somewhere of me with my 6-year-old son, getting all those autographs. I was there and I remember what I was trying to remember. It was interesting. Your article made me want, was there a shred of hope at that time at all that maybe this was a real thing and maybe he would end up being there during the season? Was there any of that? I'm trying to remember that.
I think it kind of depended on who you asked. I mean, I think, Nebraska fans were holding out hope that, since he had moved up, there was a chance that, he would love it so much and would just stay and forego life-changing money. I think from anybody that was kind of plugged in on the baseball side, the thought was there's no way in hell he was ever going to play college football. And, I think to his credit, he ultimately ended up making the right decision. I mean, he got a very handsome signing bonus. Maybe didn't pan out the way that a lot of people thought, but his pocketbook is probably better for having made the decision that he did.
Yeah. Who knew? I would see him there. 5 years later, I would see him in spring training in Arizona, hit an in the park home run. 5 years after that, we would be in the pandemic, and I would see him play about half the games in the year for the Royals that year, and that was the end of his career. That was it.
Yeah. It made for a very kind of interesting what if always,
Yeah.
because I think even if it got later in his baseball career, it was kind of like maybe just one season or 2 years he can kind of put it together here at the end. I think by the end of it, there were a lot of people rooting pretty hard for him.
Bruntz, I remember watching, I don't even know where or how I would have watched it. I remember watching one of his high school football games somehow that was on TV then. Do you recall that at all? Like in 2010 at some point. Man, did ESPN put one of those games on or something?
I don't know. Was there like a local Time Warner?
That might have been, honestly, that might have been it. I bet you're right.
Okay. I'm guessing that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a complete freak athlete. But yeah, that was back in the days when, you were lucky to get a view like that now where everything is just kind of out there streamed. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. By the way, I would have probably never thought of the name Breon Carnes again had you not. Was he transferred from Western Kentucky? Didn't he come from Western Kentucky? Why do I have that in my head? Is that right? Am I making that up?
Well, did he go there?
Or maybe he went there. Yeah, that's probably what it is. Probably went to Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's what it is. So, and then he ended up apparently at Northern Iowa. I see. He was on their 2014 football roster. So it's going to be obviously a really difficult moment for him when the Panthers and Huskers match up in a few weeks here. So
he's going to be like that little kid from Illinois. He's going to have the split uniform.
Yeah, Northern Nebraska. Yeah, Northern Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how he ends up doing that. Who do you think gets most in the mix that wouldn't have been prior? Now that Prohaska unfortunately has gone down and is out in the season. Obviously, I assume this probably means Ben Hart was going to be there, and now Corcoran looks like is going to have another shot at getting in even more games at tackle. But is there anybody specifically kind of in that next level at tackle that is most likely to start to see some minutes that they might not otherwise have seen?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think like it was probably a pretty heated competition before the injury between Corcoran and Prohaska. I mean, I don't know that was that depth chart was necessarily set based on how last year ended. So I think Gunnar Gatula from here in Lincoln, I think he's going to get a pretty long look at potentially going in there. I mean, he didn't play last year, but he was always the number 2 left tackle on the depth chart, and I think that they kind of like what he can be long term at that tackle spot. He's been through a couple off seasons since he enrolled early, so I think he's probably the next man up. I think when you look at the tackle spot, there's not a ton of depth there, and they had Tyler Knack last year, who was kind of the backup right tackle. They moved him into guard, and I think they have some guys that can probably play both, but it's a tough kind of spot to be in. I mean, I think right now, if you were handicapping it, I would probably say that it's either going to be Corcoran or Gatula getting the most looks. Because beyond that, I mean, I think the ideal would be that Teddy would got to be that bridge guy that would get you from the older classes to the young guys like the Grant Brickses and those types of tackles. But I think you might have to maybe lean on Gatula for some more depth a little bit sooner than maybe what they were hoping to do.
And it's interesting. I'm gonna look up his height and weight, but I just happened. I was in Memorial Stadium when they did the Team Jack event a few weeks ago, and they had the players out there, and the offensive linemen were all hanging out together, and it was striking to me. Obviously, Benhart and Prohaska are just unbelievably tall, long dudes, and then and I guess Gatula isn't short; he's 6'6", but like seeing him with the rest of them, he just was a totally different kind of body type, more of a traditional looking offensive lineman. But that's one thing that would be certainly different than you would have had for kind of. But you had the idea you'd have these bookends at 6'7" and 6'10" or 6'9" and 6'10", I guess, for Benhart and Prohaska. So Gatula might bring a little something different that way, I suppose.
Yeah, no, he's a little bit more of a. I mean, he's like a pocket-sized lineman compared to Teddy,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, he's more of a traditional offensive tackle and kind of what you think of height-wise. I mean, that was, I think somewhat difficult for Teddy in some ways, being 6'9", 6'10",
Yeah.
and kind of having to add the weight the way he did, and then I mean, he had really slimmed down this past off season, and I think was feeling a lot better. So
Yeah.
that's the tough part about the whole thing. I mean, we had they'd done like the little Nebraska media day like the week before. And he was talking all about Teddy was talking about how great he felt, how excited he was to get back and have a good off season, and to have that happen, you just feel for the kid for what he's gone through.
Yeah, and you wonder, I hope he comes back, but I understand that because last year they talked, there was kind of a lot of talk about how he was just it took a while to get used to playing, right, with the injury and sort of the mental side of that. And of course, I mean, you play 5 games in 21 and you have a season-ending injury. You play 3 games in 2022, you've got a season-ending injury. You get in there and maybe take a little while to get into the mix, but did play, got the entire season in. But boy, I wonder what kind of I'm sure he hasn't even decided on anything like that, but it'll be interesting to see if we see him back again, given another go at it after 3. You can't blame somebody after 3 knees like that if they said, hey, this is just too much.
Yeah, well, he'd had a shoulder issue too that cost him one of his seasons. So it's been a little bit of everything, and not just the knees too. That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah, that's right. It was a shoulder as well. So it was the Oklahoma game, I believe, and then the Georgia Southern game in 2022, which would have technically been his redshirt year. So this would be his junior year, but probably will be able to get a medical redshirt for that if he wants to continue to come back. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to get into is I'm curious how you see what's that cornerback situation going to be like? Like, what do we know about Bly Hill? How long that might take? Is it likely that when he is available, is going to kind of step in right away and start to get some time because it seemed to be trending that way? And who's most likely to be seeing the time there as they wait potentially for Bly Hill to get back?
Yeah, I mean the time for the updated time frame that we got from Matt Rule, I believe it was in Indianapolis, was that initially they had thought that the leg injury to Bly Hill would probably carry into the start of the season, like after games had started, and he's apparently ahead of schedule. They're kind of targeting probably next week because they'd said kind of a couple weeks into fall camp is when they'd start it. Looking at bringing him back and kind of easing him back in. I mean, that's going to be I think a slowish process to kind of get him up to speed. Okay. And you kind of remember too. I mean, this is he went through spring ball, but at the same time, he hasn't played an FBS game before, so there is an adjustment there. But you kind of look at what they've got. I mean, they brought in Thayer Wright from USC. I think he's in that mix. They really like what Jeremiah Charles is going to be long term, the redshirt freshman at that corner spot. They've been playing Marquise Buford kind of at both safety and corner, and during the open practice the other night, Buford was actually the other corner that they had in there, and that was kind of he's played it before, and played it in high school. and they're kind of cross training some guys, just seeing if they can help them at safety, if they can help at corner. And that's, I think, the one thing that you can say for this defensive back group is that they've got a lot of guys that can kind of play both if needed. So the competition is ongoing, and I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how quickly Hill can kind of get back and get his legs under him to see if he's going to be competitive in that in that corner race right out of the gate. So they've got guys, but I mean that's legitimately, I think, probably the most heated position battle right now, on the roster. And I didn't even mention, two freshmen that are kind of in the mix too. Mari Sanders from Florida, and then Larry Tarver, another guy from Miami, have been, talked about behind the scenes as guys that are kind of ahead of where they should be at that point in their careers. So lots of options there.
Last question for you. What's the over-under on when there is an announcement about the starting quarterback? I know Rule has been doing some other media and was asked about it, and he's still obviously not ready to do it now and talking about the entirety of the room. Is this something where, reading the tea leaves, we're probably talking maybe the weekend before the opening game? You wouldn't really run this all the way up to the opening game, I wouldn't think, because at some point you just want to quit talking about it. What do you think is going to happen with that?
Yeah, I mean, if you run it right up to like kick time, I don't know that there's gonna. I don't know that the big reveal is gonna be the big reveal that you would. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. That's where this has kind of been headed for a while. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to carry a little bit more into fall camp. I mean, I think what they've said is that that you can kind of skew the reps in practice without having to formally name a starter, and I would expect that's probably what they'll do. But I mean, I don't know that there's a ton of mystery about where things headed.
Right.
But I mean, I do think they will let it go for a little bit before they make a decision formally and announce it. But yeah, I'm not expecting like the first confirmation being the first offensive series. I don't see that happening.
He brings them both out onto the field and raises one's hand at the 50-yard line before. I feel like it. I feel like you probably will be ready to be not being asked about it after a while. So at some point, I would say probably in the next week or two, you're going to hear something, but we'll see. It'll be interesting.
Did they make a big deal out of it? Do you think? Like, is it just like a mention in a press conference? Is there a graphic? Is there?
No, no, I don't, because I feel like there's definitely a concerted strategy not to go too overboard with the hype. I mean, and I talked about this the other day. You watch any of those documentaries that they've done, like the Chasing 3, and it feels like he is very purposely not featured extensively in those. You know what I mean? When some of I feel like they have been very careful, for whatever reason, not to go too all in on the hype and everything else. And I don't know exactly what the reason is for that, but that would lead me to believe the answer is definitely no. It'll be one of the things at the beginning of a press conference when he's like going over injuries, and he said, and Dylan's going to be the starter for the game. That's how I expect it, at least.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. No white smoke, none of that. None of that stuff. So
no, I don't think so. All right, Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you for the shot of nostalgia and memories with the 2011 Fan Day. I'm gonna have to go look.
I'm always happy to do it. Anytime we can talk about the Starling and Breon Carnes, I'm happy to help.
And the people can't get enough, I'm sure. So there you go. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Take care.